What's up everyone, this is Soul, and welcome back to Warcraft Weekly, your emotional roller coaster of WoW highlights. Hit the like button, subscribe for the copium-filled coverage, catch me live, and let's begin with stuff. World of Warcraft in 2023 has been a healthy stream of this stuff, or rewards to enjoy. Folks looking for player power have had a very accessible path to gearing that they can jump into straight away, without having to prepare their characters with required legendaries or side progression and so on and so forth. Those looking to thrive with the profession and general gold making, it's not an easy path, and it definitely depends on the realm they're on, but broadly, the player economy is thriving with more windows of opportunity than before. And people who are interested in fun items like toys and transmog and appearances, okay, maybe not everything is your cup of tea, but on the regular, there is something to work for, and some fangled but fairly stress-free path to getting it. Take for example the next few weeks. World of Warcraft is doing a couple of crossover events with Diablo 4 that's going on until July. At the moment, we have treasure goblins. Every half hour, people are directed somewhere, either to a capital city or a Dragon Isle zone to knock down a treasure goblin that drops all sorts of fun stuff. Probably my favorite is this back transmog that totally fits with this outdoorsy set that I threw together, but really this works with all sorts of outfits to hit that explorer or adventurer vibe. And there's a very pleasant surprise. Tyrael's Charger, it's a mount that came from ancient times that came with basically pre-ordering Diablo 3, that's a rare drop from these goblins as well. You have a higher chance to get the mount, as well as a 36 slot bag on the first kill of the day, but of course you could keep farming goblins as they appear every half hour for a reduced chance. I happened to get the bag by just being persistent, and it doesn't seem to have the same sort of drop rate as, say, the Heartbreaker mount. There's a spreadsheet that takes away all the mystery and it tells you where to go every half hour, and I'll link it in the video description if you're interested. Those of you who have a Prime Gaming, aka an Amazon Prime subscription, the epic purple shirt is available for you to claim. I think that our standards for what makes a good shirt has it's changed a bit, and as always, I don't recommend subscribing to these services just for the shirt, but apparently it's cheaper than eBay anyway. Next week starts a new month of the Trading Post, which is already pretty much a giveaway of stuff, and of course that's your reminder to pick up your tender and spend it, or to free stuff for the upcoming round. And then next month, after the Diablo 4 event is over and the game has come out, another event begins the day after. This time it's a massive 50% bonus to experience and reputation gained. Please don't get hotfixed. That lasts until July 11th, and by then, the July round of Trading Post items will have come in too. It's a very event-filled month, but on top of that, we've got to speculate too. Somewhere in there, are we going to get patch 10.1.5? According to our handy-dandy chart, we've been trending about 8 weeks between patches, which could mean the patch could come as soon as the last couple weeks of June, which seems a little bit short, right? We're a month from that estimation, and many of the major features are not testable yet, like the dungeon and the world events. A lot can happen in a month, as it's been clearly demonstrated since Dragonflight's launch, but the takeaway that I want to leave for you is to point out that the day-to-day of World of Warcraft is it's like I'm coasting, I'm happy, up here, and it's awesome being able to constantly look forward to another thing. WoW Classic is dead, according to critics who are railing against the introduction of the WoW token to Wrath of the Lich King Classic. I mentioned this earlier in the week, but a follow-up statement from the WoW Classic team was pretty transparent in what the team has to deal with on a constant basis, pointing out that exactly 73,057 WoW accounts were closed in just the past 2 weeks. It probably covers every version of WoW, but that's still a ridiculous number of closures, while according to our eyeballs, Blizzard is still losing that battle against the bots. And so, to mitigate the damage from botting and the real money transactions, they're doing what they did back during Warlords of Draenor, and they're basically gonna sell gold and do it better. The WoW token, as you know, turns everyone into a potential gold seller, ensuring a safe and above-the-board exchange of gold via game time token, minus the feature of turning that token into Battle.net balance. For now, this should secure the classic WoW token as its own sort of closed economy that's not influenced by Battle.net activities like new game releases. It's a shame really, because again, this is from our own observations, the WoW team probably could have done a lot more to curb the botting before so much gold entered the market. And it's easy to say that Blizzard's doing this whole thing for the money, but to counter that statement, well, they could have done it way earlier like they did in China, but they didn't. So I have a theory, and you may not like it. Here's kind of a trigger warning actually. I'm kind of blaming the players here. But consider this, some players, not all, but some, to a degree, they can be pretty lazy. Even before these conversations of buying services like carries or gear, we talk about catch-ups, we talk about account-wide progression of all sorts, and deterministic gear paths, and extra role tokens, gear that changes the main stat with your spec, things to save time and to get us to our goals that much faster. WoW Classic is an obviously successful experiment that brought back the nostalgia of the World of Warcraft that once was, but what else is WoW Classic? Effectively, it's still the same game that many of us experienced years and years ago, before the account-wide stuff and the skips. There are folks out there who will try to shortcut wherever they can, and they'll use every trick imaginable, including buying carries for levels and to have gear passed to them. Services that might cost real money, or gold, which again could be bought with real money. Knowing how skip-happy players can be, was it really any surprise that the WoW Classic team eventually introduced paid level boosts? It's not unreasonable to think that they looked at the big data and they saw how many people were leveling off of dungeon carries and they were like, okay, well, there's definitely an audience for a paid boost. Might as well take the money for ourselves. Of course, the side effect, it tempted people who otherwise don't buy a boost to feel okay with crossing that line into doing it because, oh, now it's okay, much like the WoW token. The Blizzard teams that fight off the bots, they take the bulk of the blame for allowing so much gold to still enter the market, which does nothing but help gold sellers. At the same time, there are those players who are less about reliving the nostalgia and building those bonds the way that they did in the past. They just want to quickly gear their characters with the best stuff so they can finally play the game. It might sound familiar. It creates this cycle that turned into the GDKP runs that Classic players experience now. They buy gold and get gear from these carries, and then maybe they become part of these carries and they get paid gold thanks to newer folks who coming in who bought gold. From observations, at least, the Classic players who are still about community and just play with their guildmates and close friends, they're not affected by much of what's been going on. And the hardcore community, which is far less dependent on real money transactions than gold buying, has exploded in recent months. The team has responded with hardcore Classic servers that are going to be out later this year. Part of the hardcore appeal, I imagine, is that it's just different. It's not the usual thing. It's in essence, it's the story of how your character lived and died, instead of the usual, hey, let's level up and then do the regular routine. Once the token stabilizes, it's probably going to do what the modern token does and be a strong competitor against illicit gold. If there were fewer people that bought gold from third-party sites, the people who run these bots, they might be less motivated to participate. The question now is, how does the game move forward with the WoW token in place? Dragon riding in the old world is definitely coming, but not yet. In a blue post, the team addressed the data mined information on mounts that are being refitted for dragon riding and confirmed that as a feature, dragon riding in the old world will go live later in the expansion. Now, I still expect folks to be all surprised, being like, hey, but it was in the game files, why isn't it in there, Blizz something time gating? So what are we getting in 10.15? Well, as announced on their roadmap, we're getting dragon racing in Kalimdor. Other data mined info revealed dragon races in the Eastern Kingdoms as well as Outland. Perhaps we'll see even more in 10.17, 10.2, and beyond. I think this is a great way to whet players' appetites and give them a taste of what's to come, and what better way than dragon racing? If dragon riding just became a thing, okay, cool, great. It's a thing now, and we can just zip around the world at super crazy speeds, and then that's pretty much it. It's what we've got, but better. Introducing it as dragon riding first is a tease, don't get me wrong, but I like that they're slowly introducing it as a game mode, a reason to visit these old locales and see how it doesn't take a big world revamp to see the world differently. And it buys them time to make sure that we don't hit some random ceiling in the sky and that we get a massive selection of mounts to dragon ride with. I'm keeping my eye on this story as it develops. And now we gotta talk about this week's lore, but also not give out spoilers somehow. There have been tons of reactions across the internet over the conclusions of the Black and Blue Dragonflight stories, and at first glance, the total presentation feels like day and night. On the one hand, the Blue Dragonflight questing has been almost universally praised. Think of the recent Heritage Armor questlines, and you get this charming, feel-good questline that has the player encounter a number of blue dragons from past stories and questlines. There's lots of build-up, it's emotional with a strong send-off, it's got transmog at the end, it's just great. Go play it. The Black Dragonflight story, which we've been seeing from the start of Dragonflight up until now, could be summed up to bad writing, or maybe the best and most reasonable outcome, depending on who you're talking to. I want to hear from you, but first you're going to hear it from me, so how do I do it without spoilers? Great question. I guess I'll say that I like where Rathian ended up by the end of this 10.1 storyline, because to me he's obnoxious. He's brash, he's reckless, but at the same time, he also stands for his flight and he wants to make good to Azeroth. I believe that. Even though he caused turmoil among the factions and he kind of started the events that indirectly kicked off Warlords of Draenor, which led to Legion, which led to BFA and Shadowlands, or, maybe it was the Jailer's plan all along. Let's try to make him feel relevant still. Even without Black Dragons, Wrathion managed to create this organization of his own. He's driven by his ambition, but does ambition alone make him eligible to become an aspect? Does calling himself a prince make it so? Is leadership something to be claimed because someone shouts the loudest or they boast the greatest accomplishment? I like how he got a chance in this expansion to grow up while still being a young black dragon. Meanwhile, Sibelian kind of sort of came out of left field. Now, we as players knew about him for a while, but we haven't seen him for a while. We speculated that he could become the next aspect. Sibelian was entrusted to lead the Black Dragons on Outland by Deathwing himself, and I don't blame him for feeling like the de facto leader after so many years, but he also let the likes of Wrathion, like this kid, and I guess the first new Black Dragon that Sibelian's met in a long time, he easily let him get under his skin. Meanwhile, Abyssian, who I believe is the oldest of the three, he didn't really make a claim. Not for the big castle or the fancy title. He was having none of that. He just wanted to help his kin and his planet, just like he did with the High Mountain Torrent. In hindsight, it set up an easy to follow story beat. 3 possible heirs to the leadership. 2 of them wanted to recapture the old legacies. Their eyes were, I guess, closed to the fact that Neltharion's legacy was of death and corruption and violence and cruelty. And these 2, they had a rivalry. They were bickering for it. By the end, even they had come to realize that what they're fighting for was a return to that which could easily lead them down the same road as Neltharion. They realized that they were going in the wrong direction. They needed to heal before they start going anywhere. I might have spoiled too much, but I really did like how 10.1 handled the Black Dragon storyline as well. I think the difference between the 2 flights, the blues and the blacks, was that we didn't quite know what to expect with the blue flight, while the slower burn and the lack of additional Black Dragon characters, it left the writing team to have this very small number of characters to play off of each other. When the writing team also set up a sort of contest to see who would win, that naturally created conflict among fans who invested themselves into one or more of these characters. So to have their character lose is a setup for a negative reaction. I wouldn't necessarily call that bad writing, but more specifically, we got another one of those tune in next season to find out what happens next. And the build-up not only got tiring for some, it made the audience divisive. I would love to discuss this with folks in the comments. What did you think of these storylines? Do you agree with the outcomes? And there's a very effective collection of the 10.1 cutscenes that were put together by Lace TV. If you want to watch from beginning to end, maybe you'll get where I'm coming from. A link to that is in the description, and that is the show. This week turned out to be pretty exciting with the dragon riding in the old zones and more easy cosmetics to get, with more to come. I happened to finish up my Niffin rep, and now, if I feel like it at least, it'll be super easy to get my renown up with alts. I kid you not folks, I even went into a Mythic Plus with Pugs twice. It was wild. We did really well in the raid too. We slapped normal real quick before progressing 5 bosses into heroic, and we did a guild classic. We did like the last pull of the knights, and it brought down Rashok. And now it's off to Scar next week, when I guess we're gonna get another Spark of Shadowflame next week, and I mentioned the trading post later that week, and then the early Diablo 4 really. There is a lot going on, okay? And I want to get back to farming for them Diablo weapon mogs, so let's get out of here. Let's give a hearty thanks to the folks over on Twitch. I appreciate you. Our beloved patrons, thank you. And to newcomer Chris, thank you for your pledge. And to you, viewer, you made it to the end. You're awesome. So now hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, share me with your friends and family, catch me live on Twitch, and I hope to catch you later. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.